Jai Jinendra, welcome to Adult Class 2 Practical Applications of Jainism. Let's start with the Navkarma.
Namo Namo Sita Puja Namo Vesavasanya Eso Panchan Mukaro Sava Pava Parasno Mancha Sarvesi Paramahave.
The level of violence in the world is increasing. It's going to get much worse before it gets better. However, there are things we can do to cope with that violence. The first thing is to stay informed but set limits. It's important to be informed about current events, but if you have a constant exposure to violence, then it affects your mind. How you doing? So if you set limits on your news consumption, then you can choose, for example, instead of reading news from everywhere, choose a couple of reliable sources and just get your news from there. Does anybody have reliable resources for news? Where do you like to get your news?
NPR.
NPR?
There's another, I think one of my cousins recommended, it's called Morning Brew.
Okay.
Have you heard about it?
No.
So it's a email subscription, free, that gives you the entire news from yesterday.
Right.
Yeah. So 5 minutes you get caught up.
That's great. Come on in. We're talking about how to cope with the increasing violence in the world. So a second way is to talk, right? Talk to your friends and family. Talk about your feelings and your concerns and ask them what they think about it. When you share your emotions in a private setting, that helps relieve stress, even in general. Coping with violence, sure, but even if you're stressed about other things, then talking with people will help. And if you don't feel like you can talk to your spouse, then talk to your friends, and we're here for you too. All of us are here for each other. The next way is to practice self-care. A lot of times we forget about ourselves, and so if you prioritize taking care of yourself, if you prioritize exercising, relaxation techniques, you can manage your stress and you can manage your own emotional well-being. The next thing to do is to be proactive about it, okay? Engage in positive actions to help reduce that violence. You can help your community. Hey, come on in. We're talking about how to cope with increasing violence in the world. You can volunteer at support organizations. If you don't have time, you can make donations to causes that help reduce violence in the world. And you can also learn how to access your politicians. A lot of us don't even know who our politicians are. We don't know their phone number or their email address. You might find that, well, it's a little bit like yelling into the wind or something like that, but it may help you, right? Hey, come on in.
Can you ping me much better?
Sure. Sure. Hey, how you doing?
Good.
Great to see you.
I'm here.
We're talking about how to cope with increasing violence in the world. We just talked about staying informed but setting limits on your news sources, talking with friends and family, prioritizing self-care, taking care of yourself, and engaging in positive action so you can actually be proactive and be a part of the solution. Another way is to focus on what you can control. That is, there are a lot of things that are out of our control that may make us feel bad. But why are we letting them make us feel bad? Well, because we have empathy, right? So that's where being proactive comes in. You can help counteract those feelings by focusing on what you can control. You can control the things around you. You can control donations you make or actions you take to support peaceful causes. You can't control the future, right? You can only control your reactions. And realize that your life has been remarkably stable compared to the lives of everybody in modern history. Actually, ancient history was even more stable than this, because people that were hunters and gatherers led stable lives for thousands and thousands of years. But in modern history, let's say for the last couple thousand years, our stability has been unprecedented. Hi, how are you doing?
Thank you.
Come on in. Great to see you.
You sit over here.
Hi, come on in. Hi, how are you doing? Great to see you guys. I'm glad you could make it. Yeah, definitely. We're talking about how to cope with increasing levels of violence. Another way is to maintain a routine. That is, if you establish a daily routine and you stick to it, you have less a chance to let those kind of thoughts creep in, right? And it can provide you a sense of stability in an uncertain. So we talked about staying informed and setting limits, talking with friends and family, prioritizing self-care, taking care of yourself, engaging in positive actions such as donations and helping support causes that lead to peace, and focusing on what you can control. Another way, of course, is to practice mindfulness. We talk about it a lot in class. I don't think I need to tell you more about that. We can support nonviolent solutions. We can advocate for diplomacy and conflict resolutions. Does anybody here have any causes that they like to donate to or they like to volunteer for? Yes.
Education, humanity, violence, scientific,
Yes. Great.
Judaism.
Of course. So if you don't, and you'd like to learn about this, then definitely look up some of those organizations. And that can give you that sense of control back that you might feel that you're lacking. Another way is to educate yourself about the causes of violence. For example, all these wars going on, well, what causes those wars? You may feel very uncertain and you may have anxiety because you feel like wars are spontaneous and they happen randomly. So if you look into the causes and you look into history and you look into the history of violence, that may help you. It may seem unseemly, right? Well, why is Dimir telling me to study violence? Well, I'll always tell you to study the truth, right? And get to the truth about why things happen. Hey, come on in. How you doing? And knowledge is the best way to fight fear. So, hi, JJ Nindra. How are you doing? Great to see you, JJ Nindra. Knowledge is the best way to fight fear. My kids are afraid of bugs, right? They're afraid of small insects and things like that. And so I ask them to identify the bugs and which ones can hurt them and which ones can't. Because they're equally scared of a fly as a spider, right? Or a wasp. And they shouldn't be equally scared of those things because all they know is it's a bug, right? So they're scared of a fly. So once we talk about knowledge, like, listen, the fly can't hurt you. It can land on you. It can't bite you. It can't sting you. They stop being scared of a fly. And I say, well, see that wasp? It's okay to be scared of that one. That one can sting you. So then you run away. So this is what I mean when I say you fight fear with knowledge. Okay? The more you understand the truth, the less scared you are, the less anxiety you have. Another way is to focus on positivity. That is, the news is inherently negative. It has a negative bias, right? That's why some newses end their day with a positive story. So it lets you associate them with positivity. But try to have a balance of positive and negative news. Think about what's going right in your life and what's going right with the people around you. And even there are some news sources dedicated to positive news. And finally, you should take breaks. That is, if you are overwhelmed with the amount of anxiety you're feeling, then it's okay to disconnect for a little while. It's okay to not consume the news for a week. It's okay to do things like that. It's okay to take a break to focus on yourself. Because if you don't focus on yourself, you can't help anybody. You can't help your family. You can't help your community. Things like that. Questions or comments about that? Yes.
Negative news you're constantly looking, doesn't it brings you down in general?
Absolutely.
So why worry about listening to those things once you know this is a negative news? Just stay, don't go there.
Right.
Right?
Right. So we do want to limit our news consumption if that's affecting you negatively. Other questions or comments?
That negative news is actually a part of our information too, which we should be able to process, right? I mean, understand it is negative, we should not listen to it, but like this wars are going on, it's negative news, but it's a part of our information, right? We should know and we should discuss about it and we should be able to think about it. I mean,
Sure, you should be informed about what's going on in the
Yeah.
world, but not such that it negatively affects your health.
yeah, exactly.
Kind of brings the awareness. Looking at in negativity, you don't want to yourself become a negative,
Right.
but you want to just क्या बोलता है, mata drashta.
Yeah.
That's what. When it comes to negativity, negative news, you just look at it, don't get affected by it, and just be aware about it.
Right.
That's all.
What I have noticed that typically when this kind of conflicts happens, you subconsciously take sides of one party, and that's when kind of it starts affecting you. Like if you just consume it as a news, probably it doesn't bother you that much. But
Right.
the moment you start associating or kind of supporting one side versus other,
Then you become invested in it, right? Then it's a story that you're a part of.
yeah,
Now I'm a part of this war, and I want these people to win.
right.
But the question is, taking sides a bad thing. If you know the truth about it, okay, you go through the history and figure out, okay, why is this happening? Mm-hmm. Is taking sides a bad thing?
If it negatively affects your health, it is.
The same is true for looking at the games.
Sure.
Either, you don't get associated with anyone. Instead, just enjoy the game.
Right. What are sports but a proxy of war, right?
That's going too far.
Just practicing.
When you get gray hair like he does, you'll care less about football too. So what does this have to do with Jainism? We've been talking for 20 minutes. We haven't talked about Jainism once. Well, every religion has to answer this question. That is, why do bad things happen to good people? So what's Jainism's answer?
Karma.
That's right. It's your karma, right? But how can it be karma if the U.S. drops a nuclear bomb on a city? You're telling me all those people's Leisha karma they were destined to expire at the same instant. A whole city's worth of people. That's like telling me everybody born in the same month has the same personality because they're a Sagittarius. How likely is that? How likely is it that a millions people had the same Leisha karma to expire in the exact same instant?
I think some theories explain part of it, like 4th of July celebration. There is a lot of fireworks and everything going on. So at that time, millions of people watch together, and all those living things are getting killed. So I think everybody is doing those negative karmas at the same time, and that may explain part of the syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard about that same. If a group of people enjoy an act, they all build same kind of karma or leisha, and then it depends upon the bondage, right? How involved you are, whether physically or emotionally, like the bandh part of it. So that's the only explanation I can think of.
Well, the answer is that karma doesn't mean that free will doesn't exist. So you can commit suicide. Your life, if you don't remember, you have a lifespan karma, right? And when it expires, your body dies, right? And you move to the next one, right? And so, but you can still commit suicide. And what happens in your final breath, you start burning that faster and faster, okay? So the fact that karma exists doesn't mean that free will doesn't exist. So that may be a solution to what happens in wars when multiple people die at once and it's clear that they didn't have all the same lifespan karma. That is, it expired and it burned very rapidly. Okay, but all religions have to answer this question. Hi, come on in. How you doing? Good. Remember, karma. Why do bad things happen to good people? Remember, you may have been leading a good life, but you may still bear fruits of things that you did in previous lives, right? And so that's why a bad thing may happen to you, even though you're a good person. One other way that Jainism will help you is practicing this attitude of gratitude, right? When you realize how good you have it, you may be able to that may be able to help you cope with how bad other people have it. Because a lot of times we feel guilty, right? Because we have a very high standard of living compared to everybody else. And so once we start appreciating that and not taking it for granted, that will help us not feel guilty, and that will help motivate us to make everybody's life better, not just our own. And of course, Jainism offers meditation and mindfulness. I've been talking to you about that for years and years. So I encourage you to start. If you haven't already. So questions or comments about that? Yes.
How the karma affect the aptitude?
So there's quite a bit of karma on your body and your intelligence, right? And so you are born with particular traits of your body and your intelligence. But you can change those as you perform nirjara. And so especially as you get rid of nanavarniya karma, which is knowledge obscuring karma, you will become smarter and you'll understand, that is, you won't become smarter. You will eliminate that karma that is obscuring the infinite knowledge that your soul already has. That's a really convoluted way to say it, but that's the truth. Other questions or comments?
So the aptitude can be created.
It can be unobscured. So you have infinite knowledge right now because you're a soul. The only thing obscuring that is your karma. So as you get rid of nanavarniya karma, you will become more of yourself.
Still, as far as the aptitude goes, we still kind of how the Gnan has to do things with the aptitude.
Oh, okay. So I thought you were talking about the same thing. Tell me, how is knowledge different from aptitude?
The knowledge is something that you experience. Aptitude is not something that you experience. Aptitude is something that, sets your trend, your tendency.
Okay, so you're defining aptitude as some type of skill in using your knowledge.
Right.
I see. I see. So how does karma affect your aptitude, your skill in using your knowledge? Sure. So I would say that a lot of what you are looking for is in overcoming obstacles, which is antaraya karma, right? And so that is what you're calling aptitude, your skill in using the knowledge that you have. Other questions or comments?
So one question I have, I don't know, it's not related, but our sanskar, what we have in this life, is it built on our karma? Like what we carry from previous life? Our sanskar, like...
Both. Both. That's why it's confusing. Because it's complicated. And our life would be so much easier if karma was something that we could see.
So what we get around us, that's based on our karma, right? So that is all the sanjog or the environment or the people, everything we get is based on our different types of karma, where we are born, and like now karma, and then how you react to it, that builds up your future.
I get the karma based on whatever my past karma is, and then how I react to it, how I settle it, then it carries to my next.
How you react to it would be the purusha. Yeah. So I think it is like, you said, it is a combination of previous karmas plus what you apply your purusha in this life. Because you may have the same siblings getting the same sanskar from your parents, but if your purusha is different than your brother,
but we also carry the sanskar from our, because say if I'm angry or if I'm like this, if I'm like that, that is all not like just came from my parents. It also comes what I carry from my previous parents.
It's a combination, I think, of karma and purushar.
Other questions, they don't have to be on topic. If your questions are off topic, that's great too, because if you want to talk about something other than what I prepared, I'd rather talk about that. So it's a different story when we talk about our kids, right? How do we help our kids deal with increasing violence in the world? First, we talk with them. Also, they don't know that everything has a name. And when you give something a name, you get power over it because then you come to define it. So their emotions, give names to their emotions, such as, I'm feeling anxiety about this. Or they might not even understand that the news is causing me to feel bad. They might not even understand that, right? So give names to the emotions that they're feeling and give names to the things that are happening to them. Understand that they're not alone. A lot of times kids are in their own head so much, they think they're alone in feeling the way they are. You know, they think they invented everything. Like, oh, I invented how to do this, because all they realize is that themselves exist in the world. So let them understand that they're not alone and that everybody goes through these types of things. Talk to them about why things happen. And if you don't know why things happen, then look at the news together to understand why violence happens. A lot of times they don't know, they can't express their emotions. So when I say talk to your friends and family, they can't do this. They can't express their emotions that well. Sorry about that. So let them write about how they're feeling. Let them write a letter to a newspaper, or let them write about what they're going through. Have them keep a journal, something like that. Do a thought experiment with them. Have them build a time machine and go back into the past to realize how people lived then and how much violence there was in the world then, and how, especially how kids lived in the world then. I would like that. A lot of times in history, we only get how adults lived, right? Even if we study anthropology and we're not talking about wars, or we're just talking about different cultures and how people live, we don't get what their kids did. We don't get what toys their kids played with, or we don't get what their kids did for fun, or what kind of school they were in. So do research with your kids about how kids lived previously. Hey, come on in. How you doing? Good. Do a risk analysis with your kids. One of the most important things you can tell your kids is that all of life is a probability, and you should live your life like that. That is, what's the most dangerous thing you probably do every day?
Drive,
right? And isn't flying safer than driving? Yeah, it's statistically safer to fly everywhere than to drive everywhere. And so if you don't understand that all of life is a probability, first you understand it and then teach your kids that. For example, why should you just always drive the speed limit? If driving is the most dangerous thing you do every day, and it probably is, why should you just drive the speed limit?
less chances of getting hit.
Safety.
Why is that?
Survival.
Why is it safer to drive the speed?
Because if everybody's driving at the same level, hopefully you're not getting accident.
Also, when they make the roads, the curve and all, they know that if you exceed the speed limit and all, it can be dangerous.
Because you have a better reaction.
Right, exactly. So 2 reasons. First is the safety reason, that is, the speed limit is rated for the road that it's on. And second, it's because everybody else drives the speed limit. So what I mean when I say probability is you minimize your interactions with other cars because everybody else is driving the speed limit. So if you go 15 under or 15 over, let's say you drive 15 miles. If you go 15 over, you encounter 100 cars. If you go 15 under, you also encounter 100 cars. And if there's 5% of crazy people on the road, you have a 5% chance to get into an accident. If you drive the speed limit, you encounter 10 cars because everybody is driving the speed limit. So you only encounter 10 cars. Now, if you have a 5%, if there's 5% chance, if there are 5 crazy people on the road, you just reduce it to 0. Okay, so that's what I mean when I say all of life is a probability. And teach your kids that. Plan for disasters, okay? So have an emergency hurricane kit if your kid's worried about hurricanes. Kids can be worried about crazy things like quicksand, okay? Tell them there's no quicksand around you. Have an emergency hurricane kit. Plan for disasters about what to do if you get lost, where to meet if you lose each other, what numbers you call, things like that. So that will help you too. If you have a plan, you feel better about it. Tell them about first responders. Kids don't know that there's people whose job it is to be a first responder in an emergency situation. Tell them that. And then that way, hopefully, they'll feel better. Help them raise money to give to donations to good causes, right? So that'll teach them many, many things if you teach them how to donate, right? That'll teach them about how you can let go of money and it won't feel bad. You can feel good about donating things. It will teach them how to save. This is one of those things that has tremendous knock-on effects for their entire lives. And that's why they do it in the temple, right? Hey, come on in. That's why they give $2 out to each kid, and then they decide where to donate it, and they don't pressure the kids to donate it, but the kids do it freely. And then they'll do it when they're an adult. Tell them we live in an age of unparalleled communication. We can reach out to people in war-torn countries if we don't donate to them because they might be a scammer, we can at least talk to them and write to them. We can use that communication to reach out to other people. Encourage your kids to think critically. Teach them how to consume the news. Now, if you don't know how to consume the news and that there's a right way and a wrong way, first you learn. There is a right way and a wrong way to consume the news. Teach them how to consume the news and how to think critically about the news. That is, what sources they're coming from, who's paying the news, what a conflict of interest is. Teach them how to consume that stuff. Establish a routine. We talked about that. That's good for yourself too. Monitor their online activity. We signed up for this program that we pay for that monitors our kids' online activity. We don't do it in secret. We tell them that we're doing it, and we tell them it's for their safety. And if they don't believe you that it's for their safety, in a controlled way, show them that things are not safe on the internet. My kids got scared at a scary movie. So they'll believe me when I say you can't go to this R-rated movie because it's going to scare you, because they actually got scared at one, right? So don't monitor them in secret. Monitor them openly. Tell them it's for their safety and explain to them why they see something that says they can't watch this video on YouTube. Encourage positive activities. Of course, I think we already do that. And lead by example. Obviously, if you are negatively affected by this increasing violence in the world, then they will be. So if you change yourself, your kids will understand that they can change themselves too.
Unfortunately, what you said, actually YouTube should add it, because today YouTube doesn't have it.
Right.
Any kind of video, it just plays. It doesn't give any kind of saying that it is 18 plus or anything. Actually, that's very valuable.
Right. And so it's hard, right? It's hard to keep up with it. You gotta, especially when your kids get phones, it's gonna be 10 times challenging. So try to do it when your kids are young and develop this kind of habits together. And then when they get their phones, then, you know, it's not too late. Questions or comments?
What is the right age to give the phone to the kids?
So that's a great one. So I've been telling my kids 8th grade. Anybody here? I know they're going to start pounding it for it earlier. My eldest one already did, and she said she wants one in middle school. I said it's too early. Can I get a hand raise on 5th grade or lower? Anybody? 6th grade? You gave your kids phones at 6th grade, 7th grade? Okay, 8th grade? Okay, great. 9th grade? 9th grade, 10th grade and up? So, around there. Yeah.
So, given Ishan's personality, you know, he doesn't care for this kind of thing. We gave him, when he was 4.5 years old, a very old phone.
Yeah.
Just so that he understands, he can communicate with his cousin. Giving him so early, he never cared for the phone.
Yeah. It's not taboo. It's not forbidden.
But he never used it. The problem is opposite. We want him to give the phone. We want him to use it, but he lost once.
He's gonna forget it everywhere.
So just this summer, he went to India. They went outside. We weren't with him, and he's saying someone pickpocketed or whatever. So now he knows that he can't want to ask us for the phone. So now he's without phone. But I don't know it's going to last too long. But that's what we did.
As soon as he finds out he can talk to girls on the phone.
YouTube all day.
I think it's different.
Sure.
Yeah.
Younger one we can't give him.
Yeah, some kids have a more addictive personality than other kids. So it really just depends on the person.
More than that, it's becoming the new tool, right? New technology. They make it to make the kids addictive.
Of course.
That's their goal, to have them spend more screen time. Forget about kids, even adults. You start opening Insta or YouTube or Facebook, you don't know how much time you will spend. Like many of the adults have that problem. Right?
Absolutely.
But the phones, you also like we started our kid at 6th grade, but they don't get the ability to install all those apps, right? So I mean, it's phone. Like our kids are using it texting because everyone, if more people have phones than don't have it, then texting becomes the way to call each other. So, but we don't put the social media. Restrict the apps, same thing, right? You got fantasy football texting. That's the only 2 things I can do. So,
But definitely all the big tech companies makes money based on the screen time only. So they want that.
Well, does anybody go ahead?
Nowadays, not only just any phone works for them. They always want the latest and greatest that's out there, right? So if parents are getting a new one, they always want the new one. So I've seen among my friends, they gave their kids like their old phones and stuff, and they always like ask, no, now I want the new one. Now I want the Apple. I don't want Android. So
yeah, we have to fight that, right?
but that's everything. It's car. You gotta have that battle every day.
Does anybody need a book?
Battle with adults, I don't know.
Yeah. Does anybody need a book? I have 2 here. Anybody have one? Okay. I have something off topic. Was anybody able to practice letting thoughts go? 2 weeks ago, we practiced letting thoughts go. Did anybody practice that? I practiced that. I got a chance to practice that just the other day. I was with my kid at a movie theater, and there was a young girl behind me, and she was kicking my chair, right? And she was excited, right? I don't think she was doing it on purpose. I know she wasn't doing it on purpose. She was being a kid. And so I thought, well, what can I do here? I thought, well, I could talk to the dad that was right there. Well, at first I thought I could talk to her. And then I was like, no, that's the wrong move. I'm going to ruin her experience, right? And then I was like, oh, I should talk to the dad and ask him to have her stop kicking my chair. And then I thought, well, that might ruin her experience too. And then I thought, well, now's a good time to practice letting thoughts go like a balloon. Right? So every time. And if you're wondering why I had all this time to think, this was the Taylor Swift concert movie. Just 3.5 hours. I had plenty of time to think about what to do because this was going to go on.
Yeah.
So I said, okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to practice letting thoughts go. So every time she kicked my chair, I was going to practice, see if I felt anger. And if I felt the anger, I was going to say, why am I feeling angry? She's a little kid. She's kicking my chair. It doesn't matter. I'm don't care about this movie. It doesn't matter. And I'm going to practice letting it go. So she kicked my chair like 50 to 75 times, right? And each time I practiced letting it go. And I felt good about it. And then I remembered how I reacted to spam calls. Like, okay, anytime I get a spam call, I think about, well, am I doing the right thing right now? Am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing? I use it like a mindfulness. So I did this thing where I let me try to associate that with these kicks in the back of my chair. And so I did that, and it worked. And so I am here to report a success. That is letting thoughts go. And reframing things, negative things that happens to you works. So if you haven't practiced it, practice it, because I can tell you from experience that it works. Okay, so we talked to, yes?
That's what the 8th Lakshma Vrat, it calls about Anartha.
Right.
Yeah, that's what we're talking about.
That's right, exactly. Other questions or comments about anything we talked about today? All right, so we talked a lot about the news, because that's obviously how we learn about the increasing violence in the world. So let's talk about how to decrease our news consumption. First, you have to acknowledge you have a problem with news consumption. I was addicted to the news earlier because I thought, it was good to stay informed, but I didn't realize it was negatively affecting my life, and I spent too much time on the news. So the first step is to always admit you have a problem, right? If you do have a problem with the news, you might think, it's a great problem to have, but compared to a lot of other problems, it's a great problem to have, but we're working on your life and progressing you spiritually, so it's still a problem, even though it's kind of minor compared to other things. Next, you can set boundaries. Give yourself 30 minutes in the morning to look at the news, and that's it. Or 30 minutes in the evening to look at the news, and that's it. Or both, set a boundary and then stick to it. Next, designate news-free zones in your life. For example, whenever you're in the bedroom, you can't do any news because you're going to go to sleep or you're waking up or something like that. Or whenever you're in the kitchen, it's time to cook food, it's a news-free zone. Okay, how about at work? Okay, whenever you're at work, just no news. Okay, whatever works for your life. Unsubscribe and unfollow all these news sources that you subscribe to. That's one way to reduce it. And figure out your phone. I told you that before, but take control of your phone so your phone doesn't take control of you. Don't let it ding for news alerts. That's the worst kind of stuff you can get. That's not even like an emergency or something. Okay, so don't let it ding. Figure it out. Be selective about the sources of news. Pick one or two sources. Yeah, it's bad to always just choose one source, but pick one or two reliable sources. I used to think that, the more sources I got, the better. But then I was falling into this rabbit hole of crazy sources, right? Just like ridiculous stuff, right? Because I was trying to compare the different sources to see how they're different. Well, that didn't affect my life one bit, okay? So just pick one or two sources and then be happy with it. Practice mindfulness. We already talked about that. Replace the time that you used to be thinking about the news with something else, okay? So you don't go back to the news. That is, replace the news time with book time. Read a chapter of your book. Or replace the news time with something else. So usually it's on the phone. So there's plenty of other things to do, but those are probably worse than the news. So figure out something else to do in your news time. Limit your social media. We talked about that. Limit your exposure to news. We talked about that. Distract yourself. So use this as an opportunity to monitor your progress. So just like when I was monitoring when I got angry and dealing with it each time, when you feel the need to look at the news, monitor that and say, why is that? Do I feel disconnected from what's going on? Do I feel disconnected from what happened today? And why is that? Do I need to understand what's going on in the world, in the news? And use it to monitor how you feel on the inside.
So I have one question on that. You say distract yourself. I have tried actually. I have distracted myself a lot of times and then again I'm back.
Right.
Why am I distracting? That's okay. It's been 1 week I'm distracting and not thinking about that.
Right.
What do you say about that? Because thought is going to keep coming and we keep distracting. Okay, I'll go for biking, I'll go for gym, I'll go for this, I'll go for this. But then again, a moment you sit quiet, again that thought comes. Again, where do I go and distracted? Yeah. It means keep doing some activities and all those things. That's what we are talking about. And that's why we hear so much music, even though sometimes people say I'm listening God music, but you are just distracting yourself by music, nothing else.
Right.
Even though it is a God music you are listening to us, it's just a distraction. So how to overcome that thought only, otherwise we keep distracting and keep engaging ourselves into something else.
That's great. I'm so glad you asked that. Now you know why it's a short-term solution. It's a Band-Aid on the problem, okay? But I will recommend it if you're not there yet, okay? So if you're further back on the spiritual path, That's good advice to distract yourself. You're further along on the spiritual path. Now that's bad advice. Now you have to do other things. Now you have to learn how to be, hi, come on in.
How are you?
Good, how about you? So now that you know that that's not going to work and that hasn't been working for you, congratulations. You leveled up, okay? You're further along. Now you know you have to find that peace within yourself. And now you know that no matter where you go or what you do, the problem is still there because it's inside of you. And now we're talking about mindfulness and meditation. And that's what you have to do. So remember, I might tell you something, and that's good or bad advice depending upon where you are on the spiritual path. Like we tell our kids, do punya. Well, isn't punya bad for you? Yes, punya is bad for you, but you're a little kid. So do punya. And then when you get older, then we're going to talk about stop doing punya, okay? So the advice changes depending on where you are upon the spiritual path. And some people seem to think that, well, if you have contradicting advice, it can't be true. No, it's just your frame of reference. It's just where you are describing what you need to do. That doesn't mean it's not true. Just because two pieces of conflicting advice are both applicable doesn't mean they're not true. Another way is to have an accountability partner. That is, if you are having trouble with something in your life, seek out someone that is also having the trouble and go through that path together and be accountable to each other. Have a group that we're accountable for. And of course, everything we talked about, the caveat is always, if it's really debilitating for you, then there are mental health professionals that you should see. So questions or comments about anything we talked about today? How about our online friends? How are you doing, Toby? Is the connection good today?
Yeah, it's doing great. Thank you.
Great. Any questions or comments so far?
Great information, and hopefully I can, not get so crazy by thinking
Right. Yeah, that's always my caveat, right? It's easy to talk about these things. And it's easy when we're here and we're sitting down to think that, I'm going to go out and change my life. Once we leave the classroom, it's very hard. But the problem is I can't follow you once you leave the classroom. You'll have to find it within you to change your life once we get out of these four walls.
The thing about the news is interesting is sometimes I'm the type of person who doesn't get too emotionally impacted when there's something bad or good going on. But my wife or other people we know would be feeling outrage one way or the other, picking the sides, right? So we get into the debates about the news and they're like, why are you not outraged? This should be...
As if that was a defect in
Yes,
you.
and sometimes I feel guilty, like, hey, should I be going to this vigil for XYZ side because I need to show support to the world, or should I just say it doesn't matter to me, or it's not something that's in my sphere of influence, so why am I going out? But sometimes I do feel guilty that I'm not taking too much interest in the news as my peers.
Don't feel guilty. You're fine. People have different problems. Some people, you have your own problems that you should work on. That's not a problem that you need to work on. If you feel like, it's a different story if you find that you're not having empathy and compassion for the people around you. And it's a different story if you're not finding empathy and compassion for the things you see on the news, right? So I wouldn't say that that's a problem. I would say it's a problem if you see somebody in front of you and you don't have compassion for them, then you might want to work on that. But if you don't have compassion or empathy for people that you feel on the news that are very far away, or you realize it's out of your control, it's not a good thing.
I have very similar observation related to elections as well.
Right.
So elections, like I have seen some people so much get involved and so much passionate about that. Like if their side does not win, I have seen people literally crying.
Yeah.
And I don't know why. Like whatever side wins, it mostly it does not change your life, like
Right.
whether this side wins or other side wins. So, but I still always get surprised, like why people are so much emotionally invested in elections and candidates and like that.
Right. And one thing we can do is we can do everything but without the emotions. For example, if you firmly are, if you're a political animal and you are into politics and you volunteer and things like that, you can still do all those things but without the emotions, right? You can be a helpful person. You can say, well, I'm advancing the rights of these people and I'm helping, but you don't have to get angry about it because that anger is decreasing the quality of your life, right? And so you can do that in your life. You can punish your children if that's what you want to do without being angry, right? Because that's the right thing to do. You're setting a boundary, but you don't have to be angry about it, right? You can have a discussion with somebody else without the emotion, okay? So you can do everything that you want to do, but just not succumb to anger, ego, deceit, and greed. We can take those out of the equation. In fact, you can live your life without those things. And you can, from an outside observer, okay, you can have the same life, that is, do all the same actions from here until this body dies, and they will not be able to tell the difference if you did it without anger, ego, deceit, and greed. But it will impact the quality of your life significantly and impact the quality of your future life significantly.
Also affect the people who look upon you with respect.
Certainly.
So their life also is affected. If you are taking action under the anger, taking a very neutralized way.
Right.
And one of the pratima, the Shravak pratima, is called out for parakram. And that parakram means that if you have a capability to influence certain things, you should go ahead and do it, but emotionless.
Right. Right. And remember, that's exactly right. When we talk about not doing things with emotion, that doesn't mean we don't show compassion for people. It's still good to do charity, to do donation, to do it, but you can do it without emotion.
For me, it's like watching a movie or show, and then when you're watching and there's some sad scene or something, I start crying.
Right.
I don't even know. I know that story is fake, but it just get too much involved in it.
Right. Right.
It's hard to control.
And what is your life but a story that you tell yourself happens to this body? But it's not true because your life is much longer than that. And it's has much more ups and downs than whatever has happened to this body. That's an epiphany that I had some time ago, and I keep referencing it, is that all we call a life is a series of events that happen to this body. Other questions or comments about anything we talked about today?
We can excuse ourselves if we momentarily get emotional, and even if we cry looking at the movie. But then next moment we should, get ourselves gather together and say, okay, this is past, and excuse ourselves. Don't get guilty.
Sure. Thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate that.